Am I the a-hole for saying it's easy to be a perfect mom when you don't have kids to someone who's infertile? I, 28 female, have a 2-year-old son. My brother Tommy, 25 male, has been dating Gianna, 22 female, for a few months now. She's a little judgmental, not of me particularly, but in general. She babysits for other children and constantly judges the parents. She says she'd never let her kids act the way the kids do. Sometimes it makes sense, and I agree. Others, she claims that her future kids will never ever throw a tantrum. They'll accept no the first time, the only time. I've told her good luck with that when it comes to toddlers. My son is learning no and has appropriate consequences for tantrums, but he's learning. It'll happen. It's also important to note that Gia is infertile. She can't have kids without medical intervention or adoption. Saturday night, we went out for my dad's birthday dinner. I messed up and didn't prepare my toddler well enough. He got overstimulated and began melting down. I quickly took him out of the restaurant to calm him down before he could cause a scene. It took all of 5 minutes, and we returned. He got food and was all good. Gianna started on, "My future kids will never act like that in a restaurant." I ignored her. The next day, myself, Tommy, our parents, my son, and Gianna went to the mall for an event they're having. My son was playing in a structure, and I had my eyes on him. My mom asked me a question, and I turned to answer her. When I turned back, he was gone. Panic set in, and myself and my parents and Tommy, along with some people nearby, began helping me look. It only took a few minutes to find him, and he was perfectly fine. He had seen a pretzel cart and wandered off. I was still pretty worked up, holding on to him for dear life. He had never wandered off before. My mom was reassuring me, saying it happened to her with both of us kids. Then I hear Gianna, "Why weren't you watching him?" I tried ignoring her. Then she said, "I would have never let him wander off." I was already so worked up and upset, I snapped. I said, "It's easy being a perfect parent when you don't have kids. Come back to me when you do." Gianna got visibly upset. Then she made Tommy take her home. Tommy and Gianna have both texted me, telling me how insensitive that is since she can't have kids. To me, she talks about having kids all the time. So why is it different for me to say that? Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. You weren't referring to her inability to have biological children. You were referring to her inability to keep her yap shut. Yeah, it's pretty easy to say you'd never do something when you don't have kids. Kids aren't accessories. They're individual human beings who can and will react differently. Yes, I am so fond of saying that I was the perfect parent/mom before I had kids. Now I have a he-knows-all 6-year-old and an attitude-filled toddler. It was so easy to make snap judgments when I was the fun aunt and the easy-peasy babysitter who only had to have the kids for a few hours. Yep. However, who the heck thinks a kid will never throw a tantrum? That would actually be abnormal and unhealthy. Even meltdowns, the kids don't mean anything bad, they're just overwhelmed. It just doesn't make sense to think that will never ever happen with your kid. I don't think OP is the a-hole, though they could have worded things differently. I imagine it was incredibly stressful for OP to not know where their child was or if something bad had happened to them, so it was incredibly inappropriate for Gia to immediately go into blaming OP for not being able to locate their child. Although Gia sounds like a very judgmental person, I do believe it was a bit mean-spirited to include the line, "Come back to me when you do," knowing that she is infertile. I think that instead OP should have just been direct with Gia and told her that they don't appreciate her input on how they parent their child. Am I the a-hole for refusing to babysit my sister's kids? My female 24, sister, female 29, is in a tight spot. She has 2 kids, Ashley 6 and Matt 4. Her husband passed away in a work-related accident. I won't go into much detail, but she got quite some money for his life insurance, and there's some other legal issues going on, and maybe she'll get more money out of it. Prior to the accident, she was a stay-at-home mom, but now, for obvious reasons, she needs to get a job. I don't have a regular job, so I'm free most days. Well, she asked me to babysit for her kids during the days. She said she'll pay me whatever I want. She said she found something that will pay her well, and she'll be able to keep their house and lifestyle and save the money for her kids' future/emergencies. I told her that I don't want to be a babysitter and to ask someone else. She told me that no one else can because her in-laws live in another state. Our brother and sister-in-law work too, and both our parents also have jobs. Basically, I'm the only one who's free during the days. I told her in that case she should send them to a daycare, but she said that the kids aren't that well since the accident, and she would prefer if they can be babysat by family, at least for a couple months until they can get used to the idea of losing their dad. Lastly, she told me if I could at least babysit for her in the morning, then her mom agreed to cut some hours so she can babysit during the afternoon. I told her that what they're going through is very sad, but I stood my ground about not babysitting. That's simply not what I want now. I told her that was the final answer and to stop calling me over that because I won't change my mind. She cried and called me an a-hole. She went on and on about how hard her life is and such. She said that her kids cry all the time because of their dad, and they need family now, and how I should help her when I can. I told her that her kids are not my responsibility. She can ask, but I already said no, so she should drop it. Now everyone in my family is angry at me. Am I the a-hole? Edit. I am free most days because I work some nights. I don't work full-time. However, that's not relevant. I don't pull all-nighters. I get home quite early. My job is not the reason I don't want to babysit. The reason why I don't want to help her is simply because I don't want to. I could babysit if I would want to, but I don't. Top comments. Probably unpopular. You're the a-hole. Your sister and her children have been through massive trauma lately. It's understandable that she wouldn't want to just send them off to daycare. After years of your niece and nephew having their mom all the time, they've lost their dad and their mom is going back to work. They're 6 and 4. They don't fully understand and won't for some time. She's offering to pay you. It'll be short term and you aren't working. I can't understand not wanting to help family after such a tragic, traumatic event. Not unpopular. I feel the same way. Why wouldn't you want to help out your sister and niece and nephew? I think it's pretty selfish. It would be different if she wanted it long term, but a couple of months and mornings only? What a horrible sister. To be fair, I don't think I should or would be able to properly care for children this age that have these kinds of emotional needs. I really don't think it would be good for anyone involved. It would likely be best if OP's sister could take that few months off before starting back at work for the sake of the children. They've already had one parent go to work and never return. Yeah, wouldn't daycare with other children to distract them and have fun with be better than OP reluctantly watching them? I think OP's sister is wrong, and what the children would actually enjoy more. When I was a kid, moping around with an adult who doesn't want to play with me would not have been preferable to playing with other kids my age, no matter the recent trauma. The OP in this case is an a-hole. I understand not wanting to be responsible for someone else's child, and if not for the tragedy, I might side with the OP. However, the OP sister has seemingly recently lost their partner, had to take up a job, and needs to find childcare for her 2 young children. This is a situation where having a strong community and family to support you is vital. It sounds like the sister just really needs their sibling by their side. I hope that OP will see that and support their sister. Am I the a-hole for yelling at a kid for crawling under my table at a restaurant? My friend Jack and I, after a long, stressful week, like to go to the local pizza place. It's not fine dining by any stretch of the imagination, but there are booths and tables of people sitting down. I see a large table near us of like 10 people, a few couples, and a bunch of small kids between like 4 and 8, and the kids are running around the restaurant being loud, while the adults are drinking wine and eating their pizza. I ignore the commotion for like 20 minutes, when suddenly, I feel like a hand on my leg, and one of the little kids is crawling under Jack and my table. I wasn't thinking and snapped at the kid and said, "Get away from our table." And the kid ran away and burst into tears. One of the parents at the other table came over and started tearing into me about how cranky and mean I was and how dare I yell at her kid who was just playing. Meanwhile, her and the other middle-aged 40-something parents are letting their kids run amok and be loud and obnoxious while my friend and I are trying to enjoy a night out. I ripped her a new one and said, "How entitled do you need to be to think it's okay to let your kids just crawl under other people's tables?" She called me an a-hole and walked away in a huff. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Her exhaustion/boundaries/parental philosophy create no obligations for you. Your personal space was invaded. You reacted to repair that. Agreed. Not the a-hole. Her inability to control her own kids does not mean you have to parent for her in her place. If the kid was just walking up to OP and trying to talk, yelling wouldn't be necessary. But this kid crossed boundaries that should have been learned multiple years ago. Do not blame exhaustion. Currently have a 3-year-old and newborn, so I am literally a walking zombie. No way in heck would I ever let my kid run around the restaurant. My daughter has never had a problem sitting in the high chair. Now the booth. With no screens, thank you very much. And if I was even with family or friend and their kids started to do that, you can dang well bet I would be a village for that child and make them sit down in that chair. Not the a-hole. I would have apologized for scaring the kid to tears, but it ripped the adult a new one. I'm not saying OP should have apologized to kid or even owed the kid an apology. I just would have felt bad that the kid wasn't being minded by adults and ended up crying. OP's not the a-hole for rightfully getting angry with the parents for not looking after their children and respecting their boundaries. Though raising children is very difficult, I feel that the mother in this situation should have been mindful of the setting that they were in. I don't feel like it was necessary to yell at the child, though it might have been OP's immediate reaction to being touched. All in all, I feel that OP was justified in their reaction. Am I the a-hole for not making an effort to see all of my kids? To begin with, I love all 3 of my children. I was a horrible father when they were young, and I didn't really get much better as we aged. I worked out of town and I never married any of their mothers. I did always pay child support and tried my best to give them meaningful gifts and experiences when they were growing up. I took them to the Calgary Stampede, I took them camping, I took an interest in their extracurricular activities, I went to their hockey and ringette games. I made sure I was at their high school graduations and I set aside money for university. The one that didn't go got an apprenticeship in my trade and used the money to buy a welding rig. We have beers, and I'll stop by his house to see my grandchildren. His sisters are night and day. I let them know if I'm in the city and then leave it up to them. My oldest occasionally agrees to meet up with me, and then spends a couple hours berating me and lashing out on me. For a long time I put up with it. Now I tend to pay the bill and leave. The youngest will invite me to her home and I will have dinner with her family. Recently, my oldest found out from my brother that I had been in town for a few weeks and hadn't made an effort to see her. I was stuck in town getting medical stuff done, and I really didn't need her stressing me out. Her mom knows about what is going on with me and also didn't tell her I was in town. My oldest is pissed because I saw the other 2. I just don't need to be yelled at for the same thing for 2 hours. Top comments. Not the a-hole for this specific question, but you sound like an a-hole in general. To be fair, it sounds like he tried. Not everyone can be a great father, but being a subpar parent does not make a person automatically an a-hole. It makes them an imperfect human. What does make a person an a-hole is not making an effort to be as good a parent as possible, given the situation. It sounds like OP did that. The daughter is well within her rights not to forgive him for being the dad she deserved and needed, but that doesn't mean he has to subject himself to her tirades when it conflicts with his mental health. I'd be on board with this if it was 1 kid, but it seems to be with 3 women. He could have worn a condom or gotten a vasectomy. And he's not even trying to act like he did anything more than he did or was great. Openly admits he knows he was not a good father. Although to me it sounds like he was good, but not great. But maybe my own childhood experiences make me feel that way. I think people are discounting that oldest daughter logically got the most of his worst parenting years. We've seen this before, even fairly recently on the sub, where the younger siblings don't get why older sib is not willing to just forget the past, and parents seem to think, I sucked less as time went by, is synonymous with the earlier times when I sucked the hardest shouldn't count anymore. I suspected the 2 hours of getting yelled at might be 2 hours of older daughter banging her head against the brick wall of OP's refusal to acknowledge the proceeding point and actually apologize for its early failures. Edited to add, it stands out to me on reflection that OP has very carefully not told us how much older daughter is, or if she had a different mom than 2 and 3. This is pretty important to answering the question of what OP is getting yelled at for. I would be pretty enraged too if I brought up a legitimate grievance like, you left me alone for 5 years with an unstable, incompetent mother, and the response was, but I started going to all your ring-yet games when you were 7. That's not the point. You don't get to run around blowing your wad carelessly for years and then expect that weekend dadding and throwing money around means you're entitled to demand a get out of responsibility for the very real harm you caused free card from your kids. Others may disagree with me here, but I believe that OP is the a-hole in this scenario. OP does not get to decide when their daughter gets over the neglect that she received at their hands. I'm not entirely sure what happened to OP's daughter growing up. However, OP has admitted to not being the best father. And as the oldest child, OP's daughter may likely have received the brunt of their neglect. All these years later, OP's daughter is still hurt by OP and is struggling to process their grief. The best thing for OP to do in this situation is to admit their wrongdoings. It might also be to both of their benefit to enter counseling together to help repair their relationship. Completely ghosting their daughter will only further strain OP's relationship with her. Am I the a-hole for treating my children differently? I am a father to 3 kids, Caitlin, 22, Eve, 15, and Nico, 13. Fake names. Caitlin is my ex-wife's daughter, who I raised since she was 2, and who I consider my child. And Eve and Nico are my biological children. Caitlin has been complaining since Eve was around 11 about how differently they were treated. I know exactly why they are treated so differently, and it's because how wildly different my kids are. Caitlin was an average student, which was absolutely okay by me and my then wife, because we didn't need a perfect student. However, she was an awful person. There were so many nights that she had snuck out, and we would be worried sick all night. She stole pills and money from anyone in the house, including her younger siblings. She would sneak in all the time as well, including boys, and frankly, it disgusts me that she would bring them in to have sex while her younger brother and sister were in the house. My ex-wife always was the one to dole the punishment, which was never physical, just getting grounded and taking her phone away, even though it barely worked. Nothing ever was set straight for her until a friend was caught by her parents and sent to a boarding school. She very nicely cleaned up her act and is now married with 3 kids. Eve and Nico are both extremely mature, kind, and just amazing people. They do great in school, get along great with people, and, very important to me, each other. They are just 2 awesome kids, and I am glad that I raised them that way. Whenever Caitlin starts to complain about how Eve and Nico have it easy, I always remind her why she was treated differently. That usually shut it down, but when Caitlin found out that Eve is on birth control, because she was honest with me and asked to go on it, she absolutely lost it. When Eve was babysitting her kids a few weeks ago, Caitlin took her phone and hid it somewhere and refused to give it back until Eve was disciplined just like she was. I have tried getting her phone back to no avail, and this is extremely stressful for me. She's a grown woman and acting so immaturely. Caitlin is convinced I am a total a-hole, but I am honestly not sure why. Reddit, please give me a verdict. Am I the a-hole? Edit. 12/25/2020. Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and Happy Friday to those who don't. Just wanted to let you guys know, we did get Eve's phone back. She is absolutely over the moon, but I am not quite sure what my next step with Caitlin is. I would hate making Eve and Nico go no contact with her, because they do love their older sister, niece, and nephews, but I think that is where this is heading. Thank you so much to everyone who offered their judgment. Have a great weekend, everyone. Top comments. Not the a-hole. Your oldest might benefit from some help/therapy, but I don't think you've done anything wrong to be considered the a-hole. I mean, some people are just bad people. Caitlin stole her sister's phone, reported stolen, and let the police handle it. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Tell Caitlin you'll be filing a police report for stolen property if she doesn't return the phone. Also, your other kid shouldn't be allowed around her unsupervised because she's mistreating Eve. Remind her that she's an adult and that is stealing from a minor. I don't know what her problem is exactly, but she needs to take some responsibility and sort it out. It's normal to parent different kids differently because they all have different needs. Sure, you'll try to make sure gifts and treats are even, but you can't be expected to punish your child because their older sibling did something wrong. What is your ex doing about this? You and your wife don't seem to have worked very hard on helping Caitlin. Your ex-wife thought everything would sort itself out. You didn't take Caitlin to therapy because you were concerned she would feel forced. Translation: you didn't want to fight her into doing something that she might not want to do, but she really needed. When she was offered the pill, she said the pill is for sluts. You didn't seem to have an adult conversation about safe and responsible sex, which you seemed to believe in. You were happy Caitlin got her act together on her own and didn't think about it twice. Caitlin has been saying she feels like she's treated differently since she was 11. And you just told her that it's because she was an awful person, your own words, about your freaking child. Was she an awful person at 11? Why didn't you and your wife ever address the reasons why she acted out? You speak about her as an issue that you thought luckily had fixed itself, rather than your daughter that you love, and I'm sure she perceives that. Her stealing the phone is not right, of course, but it seems to me that there are many more underlying issues that you and your ex-wife don't want to acknowledge. I feel bad for your daughter, honestly. She had been saying it since Eve, now 15, was 11. That would make Caitlin 17 or 18 at the time. This story really stressed me out. Although there is absolutely no excuse for Caitlin stealing her sister's phone, I can somewhat sympathize with her thought process. When Caitlin was sexually active as a teen, you said it disgusts you that she had sex in the house when her siblings were also in the home. Yet, you purchased birth control for your younger daughter, who was around the same age as she was. The language OP uses when describing Caitlin is disturbing. How can you refer to a child you raised as disgusting and an awful person? As a teen, Caitlin's behavior was out of control. However, it might have been a cry for help. Dealing with a divorce isn't easy for children, and she may have benefited from counseling or therapy. I don't feel that OP was justified in treating their children differently, and this discrepancy in treatment is likely at the root of Caitlin's misbehavior, even now. Thanks for watching, and let me know down below if you agree with the verdict. Also, consider checking out my other channel, *_Vingart, where I post my artwork, and my Etsy, StarVingartCompany, where I sell my art prints and stickers. Bye!